A lot of people have their thoughts about my family, and I think they have it wrong.
You would definitely think something like this is made up.
This is a case that shocked the nation.
Deep breath. All right, here we go.
Like the pine trees lining the winding road.
At the time, Steve was 7.
I've got a name.
Stephen was taken
I've got a name.
and absolutely disappeared from the face of the earth.
You always had this little flutter of hope, they'll find him today.
He came home.
I've got a name that he kept here.
Stephen also helped rescue missing 5-year-old Timothy White.
My father was a hero. He saved another child's life.
Prodigal son returns, a miracle.
Wow, we were so naive.
And I carry it with me like my daddy did.
A lot of attention went to Stephen. We all got a little jealous. My older brother, Cary, he was off.
Stephen was all over the news.
Were you afraid?
A little bit.
That's when he started the movie and all that.
It was the biggest deal in Hollywood.
The NBC made-for-TV miniseries is called I Know My First Name is Stephen.
48% of America was watching it at the exact same time. It was like the Super Bowl.
We wanted to go back to our normal lives. Kind of hard to do that when you got cameras everywhere, though. My brother, Cary, got annoyed.
And I'm gonna go there free.
How can you create a bigger story than Stephen? Well, he did.
I've got a
3 sightseers went missing.
It's no longer the story you thought it was.
There was a killer on the loose.
My mom sat us down, and then she told me that was my Uncle Cary. That's crazy.
Everybody wants a happy ending. Not many true stories are a happy ending.
What is that connection that flips somebody into a monster?
I've got a name.
You never know what the ending's gonna be. I didn't know how this would end.
I've got a name.
You don't want to believe it, but the truth, it's unreal.
Shocking.
I've got a name.
You got to get the whole story.
I've got a name.
There are many sides to it.
I've got a name.
How much more could happen in one family?
I've got a name.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Cherry the Geek TV. I'm Joe Vanourney. Captive Audience, a real American horror story, is a fascinating 3-part true crime docuseries that premieres on Hulu on April 21st. It's the story of how a story gets told and how the media's magnifying glass impacts the characters that are caught in its narrative. Today, we are joined by the director of Captive Audience, Jessica Dimmock, and then we've got Ashley Stayner, who is one of the participants in the documentary. She's Stephen Stayner's daughter. She's Cary Stayner's niece, and she's featured in the documentary. Ladies, welcome to Cherry the Geek TV.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Jessica, we will start with you. How did this project start? I mean, it's a story that's been around for decades. It's been told many, many times by many, many people and covered many times by news organizations. How did you come aboard the project, and what was it about the story that intrigued you and made you want to turn this into a docuseries?
Yeah, I think it was, precisely what you just said, which is that this is a story that's been told a lot of times, and it's a story that maybe hasn't been told in its entire in its full capacity that many times. But regardless, it's been told a variety of times, and it was really the opportunity to kind of go back and look at all of those retellings, and it was an opportunity to also say, wait, this is a story that's been told a lot of times, but I don't know that I've ever seen the family participate in any of them. So it was an opportunity, when I was kind of presented with the story, it was an opportunity to look at all of these layers, to look at a Hollywood version of the movie, to look at, more salacious kind of sensational true crime versions of it later in the 90s, and to look at all of those layers, and then also say, but, if we were to sit down with Ashley or sit down with Kay, the mother, and hear from them, what would that kind of add to the story?
So how did you approach them, and what was their reaction when you came to them and said, hey, we want to tell this story again, but this is the perspective that I kind of want to go with? How did you go about that, and what was their reaction?
Yeah, so when I was first brought the story, I knew that Ash, the producer that had been developing it, I had made a little bit of contact, and I knew that Ashley was at least open to the conversation. And it was really knowing that she would participate that kind of made me want to take it further, but also getting on the phone with her and saying, I want to do something a little unconventional, and I want to kind of do a more hybrid thing where we use this Hollywood movie, but in different ways, and kind of write. And that's a very, it's a kind of tricky thing to do on whatever I'm going to be doing, but also to like present that back to a family member and say, I want to take the story of yours and kind of do some unconventional things with it, is a little like tricky and intimidating. And Ashley was always kind of very open to the idea of that there's a lot of different ways to express this story, and that this could be one of them.
Ashley, let's get your take on this. When she contacted you, what was your thought process going in? And have you participated in any kind of interviews like this before, or is this the first time?
I'm sorry, Joe, can you repeat that again? My connection was a little unstable.
So I want to get your take on how, when Jessica approached you, had you participated in any kind of documentary or interview on this subject before, or was this the first time?
No, this was my first time that I've ever done anything even remotely close to this. No interviews, no nothing. So
she contacted you. What was your thought process, and what made you want to finally tell your side of the story?
I think it was because I had never been involved in it before. There was one instance that I can remember perfectly. Was I saw a documentary on 2020 about it, and no family, nothing to like really talk about who my dad really was. It was all, second, third party people. And, I wanted people to know, like, what was his likes? What was he into? What did he do? Like, who was his friends? And there was no personalization about him. It was just, this is what he went through. He died. This is what his brother did. He's in jail. It was just kind of like facts of what was already put out there by, people before. So I wanted it to be personal because it's my story, it's our story, and it's an interesting story, but when everything's said and done, you want people to know that, it's still people that are behind those stories.
So you weren't the only family member to participate. Your mother participated, your brother, your grandmother. I don't know if you can speak on behalf of them, but was everybody's kind of the same thought process that the family wants to all come together and tell their version of the story? And can you speak to that or?
Yeah. No. No, it took some talking into on my part, my brother, at first he didn't want to do it, and then he ended up doing it. And then my grandma, she's like, well, it's your dad. If this is what you want to do, I'll do it, but I don't want to. There was like certain things that she didn't want to talk about. And my Aunt Corey, I didn't even know if she was going to do it. She ended up coming through at the last minute. So it did take some finessing to get people to want to do it. I think I was the only one that was like, yeah, let's get it. But it took some convincing on my part for sure.
And Jessica, were you involved with those conversations as well? And was it any, like I know Stephen's mother, your grandmother, was very forthcoming in her discussions about the kidnapping and his coming back and the media. But when it came to talking about Cary, she shut down. She said, "I'm not talking about this." Was that kind of known ahead of time, and then you kind of tried, maybe she's going to be open now that she's comfortable? And what was that?
Yeah. I knew that going in, and I asked her that in part Of course, as like a storyteller, there's always a possibility that maybe someone changes their mind. But really, I asked that because I wanted the audience to understand that she had a boundary. And it wasn't so much that I wanted to test that boundary as much as I wanted to like express that boundary. Like, here's this woman that has come and sat down. She was actually on this several month-long road trip through the American West. I like met up with her while she was caravanning around in her van with her dog, and and she sat down and she took the time to really talk about this like horrible and painful experience of having her son kidnapped, and then the amazing thing that happened when he escaped and came back. But she had a boundary about that, and I wanted the audience to understand that like she could be both, that she could have this story that she wants to tell and have a story that she doesn't want to tell. And I will say that I think everyone, the family members that Ashley was talking about, but also like, I think anyone that sat down with us really did so for Ashley in a lot of ways, or for Ashley and her brother in a lot of ways. I feel like most people participated, especially when we're talking about Stephen's part of the story. They participate because they wanted something that they know about Ashley and Stephen's father to come out. Or Stephen Jr.'s father to come out. And so I really feel like it wasn't just the family members that she was close to, but even people that she had never met, Stephen's friends in Compchi, that like really wanted to do this because they wanted his children to understand who he was.
Now, one of the things I find really fascinating about this is you went and got the actors who played Stephen and who played Cary in I Know My First Name is Stephen miniseries from the 80s. You have this audio recordings of both of them that's distorted, so it's not really good to use it. I mean, you could have used it, but you'd have to subtitle it and stuff. So you went to the actors and you said, "Hey, you played these guys. Would you like to give voice to their words in this?" Talk about that choice, and when you approached them, what was their reaction?
Yeah, so this, I had the opportunity to develop this idea and work on this with my co-EP, Piper Weiss, and this was an idea that she had early on, and she's like really one of my favorite brains. And we realized that, there were these, to make the made-for-TV movie, I Know My First Name is Stephen, the writer had gone back to this family and conducted hours and hours of interviews. And we had found those archives, and they were damaged archives. Like you were saying, they were really like hard to hear. And so for a while, kind of had to live with like, oh, there's all of this great material, but there's no way to get it on screen. And then there was this realization that the people that played those characters, instead of asking them to act out those characters or read lines that a writer had written based on the things that the real people had said, it was an opportunity to just return kind of to the source. And that like Corin, by doing this, and Todd by doing it, they weren't so much acting as just being proxies. It was like, these are people that for different reasons can't be here to participate, but they did say something, and I want to express on screen what they really said. And so it was really cool to have them kind of stand in and voice the stuff that either was too degraded in audio, or in some cases we only had the written version, not the recorded version. And so that was really an interesting thing to be able to do. I was so excited that they said yes. I was so excited.
There's a little bit of surrealness to it too. I think they both made comments like, "This is so trippy that we're like, jumping back."
I think the story had really impact. It's a really wild. It's a really wild story, and there's really heroic parts of the story. And so I think it wasn't something that they had done a job and just forgotten about it. I think that they had both thought about it in these decades since their roles, and so they were great for participating.
What was, I'll ask both of you this, what was the biggest surprise in making this, either during the production or maybe after the fact, anything that came about that you were not expecting?
I'll take it first. I think I was really blown away at the kind of media presence upon Stephen's return. He was a 14-year-old. He had done this incredibly brave thing, and you know, media follows him to school. They're there at his first day of school. They're peering through the, I mean, things that I just don't think would happen now. But that there were really like so few boundaries, and that he had to live out this return in a very public way. And he had to, and the kind of revelations of, oh, okay, if he had been gone for these 7 years, a bunch of really terrible things had happened during that time. And that also he had to kind of go through that in a very public way. And I think that was really surprising. And I found sometimes it was so amazing to watch him, but I also I felt for him a lot.
Ashley, any surprises for you?
It was very surprising to me that he was just so well publicized. Like, I didn't know that it was that big of a thing, and that everybody all over knew exactly who he was, what his story was. Like when Corky said, it was bigger than the Super Bowl. I never realized that. To me, he's just my dad that this thing happened to, and to realize how big it was to people that he came back home. It wasn't something that I had thought of.
There's a point in the docuseries where they're talking about when he came back, he didn't really go to therapy, but that doing the interviews was his therapy. Having this TV movie made about him was his therapy. Ashley, was making this docuseries and participating in this, was there? I know you lost your dad when you were very young, and grew up, learning about him through interviews and this miniseries, but it's not completely accurate. Was any part of this therapeutic for you?
Oh, definitely. Yes. It just was so nice to be able to talk about something that for so long was not really talked about, I'm just lucky that I got a chance to experience it, and got to be able to just have this as part of, my getting to know him, because not people that lose their fathers don't get to, have all the things that I have that for my dad.
Now that the docuseries is completed, you've seen the entire thing, Ashley, already? Yes. Okay. Yeah. What is your reaction to it? What's your family's reaction to it? Are they happy with the final product? Yeah.
It's just, so far I'm the only one that's seen it. But yeah, I love it. I love everything about it. I think that Jessica made it specifically for me. I've told her that it's like my little home movie video, but the world gets to see it and experience it with me, and I'm excited about that.
Well, we are out of time. Jessica, I'll give you the final word. Anything you want to add before we go?
No, I mean, Ashley feeling that way is the best thing, because in a lot of ways, I feel like I kind of just make it for her. So I'm really thrilled that that's the sentiment.
Well, it's a fascinating docuseries. If anybody watching has any interest in true crime or media and how media affects people both positively and negatively, I highly recommend it. It's called Captive Audience, A Real American Horror Story. And you can see all 3 parts April 21st on Hulu. Ladies, thank you so much for joining us today on Cherry the Geek TV.
Thank you, Joe.
Take care.